Great. Welcome everyone to the CNY Solidarity and Indivisible Onondaga County monthly meeting. My name is Elaine Denton. I'm on the coordinating committee member for the CNY Solidarity. So first, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the land of Onondaga Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And I wanted to highlight an exhibit at the Shenandoah Center, which is in Liverpool. It's called Voices and Votes, Democracy in America. This exhibit explores the history, principles, and ongoing evolution of American democracy from the revolution to today's challenges. And it's on view now through May 30th. Just stop by. So thank you so much for everyone for being here today. Just for a show of hands, how many is this your first meeting? Right. Thank you so much. Welcome. And we wanted to also check in and say, how for a show of hands, how many is this your second or third meeting? Yeah. Thank you so much for coming back. And then I have one last one for a show of hands. How many have been organizing since 2017 or before? So keep your hands up for a second. And look around. There's a lot of knowledge in this room, and we want to make sure that we are connecting with all of you. We want to continue to grow and build a movement for a better tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
If you have any questions, there's many people in the room to ask, and we will try to do our best to find an answer for you. So now I'll turn it over to Peter McCarthy for some announcements.
I'm going to open the floor for announcements in just a second. I do want to share one thing from the coordinating committee with you. We get regular requests to sign on to petitions, endorsements for particular causes, letters, and our policy is that if the coordinating committee is satisfied that that request is in line with the goals and objectives and beliefs of CNY Solidarities, we're entitled to sign. And we do very often. A lot of them, they have to do with climate and environmental things. We got one this week. There's a request from a local group. And they are trying to get the Syracuse Common Council to pass a safe haven for people who are transgendered and other LGBTQ people. We read through it. We said, this is an easy one. This is one we want to share with our group. So I'm just going to read you an excerpt from their resolution. Whereas New York State's Constitution provides for equal protection and prohibits discrimination against civil rights of anyone, including with protected status, including sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, and prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, publications, education, and credit transactions. And whereas the city of Syracuse previously adopted New York State, one of New York State's first local non-discrimination protections, there being resolved that the city of Syracuse will work to ensure that all city agencies, programs, and services are accessible, affirming, and inclusive of transgender. And it mentions a little bit about what's going on from the federal level in terms of all kinds of groups. So we want to share that. We signed that one unhesitatingly. There is a petition that you can sign. It was in the newsletter the week before last. It will be in this week's newsletter again. So please look for that petition and sign as an individual. We've signed as an organization. Okay, I've got a couple more, but I'm going to open the floor first for people who have announcements of other things going on. Genevieve?
How many people here are tenants? Just show of hand. How many people have someone in their life that they love who is a tenant in the city of Syracuse? Probably most of us. There is a very important tenants' rights bill called Good Cause Protections that gives tenants an innocent till proven guilty standard in evictions. It bans price gouging rent hikes, and it gives people a right to a lease renewal as long as you pay rent and follow the rules of your lease. This prevents discrimination and retaliation. Over 15 cities in New York have opted into this, and Syracuse's city council is the only one in the entire state that has voted it down, which is crazy because of how bad rent prices and housing instability is in the city. And so if just about 1,000 people vote as a tenant in the city elections this year, then that will make enough of a change for the incoming city government to pass good cause. And so my organization, which is called Housing Justice for All, which is statewide and won the bill, is working with the Syracuse Tenant Union, Citizen Action, and many others to get people to vote like a tenant, a combination of homeowners in solidarity with tenants and tenants who may be less likely to vote, but can turn out for something that's actually gonna improve their lives. So I will be over there because what we need in order to get to 1,000 votes is we need to go out and talk to neighbors. And so we are trying to get a volunteer team of at least 20 people to get 1,000 people signed on to vote like a tenant. And so if you are interested in doing that, or if you have an organization that could sign on and endorse or spread it to listservs, that would help us get there. Thank you for listening.
Two quick ones. You will see both of these in the newsletter. Wednesday the 30th, we are co-sponsoring with a number of other organizations an open house town hall with Lieutenant Governor Delgado. We are told this is a listening tour. It has nothing to do with whether the Lieutenant Governor might or might not have aspirations to higher office. So we agreed to co-sponsor it. It's at Well of Hope Church over near St. Joe. The information will be in the newsletter that you get on Tuesday. Last one, I got a call from Chris Bolt at WAER. They do some excellent reporting. This will also be in the newsletter. Chris is very worried that their funding is going to get not only cut by the federal government, but clawed back. So please watch for that item in the newsletter and be ready to say something, probably to our House of Representatives congressperson.
Hi. So I don't feel ridiculous, but I feel like that many other people in our country are usurping our symbols of patriotism when you all are right here and you're very patriotic. But there's one gentleman who is being very patriotic out in the open. His name is John Mannion, and I'm here because I'm part of a group it's a fundraiser. It's next Saturday afternoon from 4 to 6. What I'm going to do is leave copies of these of my information here. And the one thing that isn't on here is that he will take questions and answer questions during this event. So thank you.
How many of you have signed the petition for the extension of the comment period for the DEIS? Okay. So on the table is this, which is another petition, and I'll be really brief. A critical part of the Micron project is an environmental review. There is a federal version, which is called the Environmental Impact Statement. There's a state version, which is called the State Environmental Quality Review. They are gigantic documents. They are likely to be thousands of pages long, and the official allowable comment period for the public to comment on this environmental review, the results of which will profoundly affect almost every imaginable aspect of Central New York life, is 45 days. That is profoundly absurd time for experts and for the public to be engaged. In addition to that, there are no provisions in either the federal or state document for any kind of public hearings. So a group of environmental organizations, including CNY Solidarity, got together and formed a coalition called Sustain CNY. You can find the website is sustaincny.org. And we created a petition that does two things. It requests or demands that the comment period be extended to 120 days, and it allows for a minimum of 5 public hearings. That's what the QR code on this sheet of paper takes you to. This is as non-political as you can get, and the fate of our entire Central New York community can be affected by the results of that environmental review and what Micron can get away with, and OSIDA, who's right now holding that document and refusing to release it. So I urge you to sign that petition. But this is do or die for us. Just so you know, the word on the street is that the official release date for the documents is June 4th, which means from June 4th, if nothing happens, we will have 45 days for experts and for the community to read what could be a 2 or 3 or 4,000 page document and comment on it intelligently and potentially influence the outcome. So this is really, really, really important. So before you leave here, if you have not signed that petition, make sure you pick one of these things up, scan it, and fill it out. Thanks.
City budget hearing this week. It'll be in the newsletter.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Cohen. I volunteer for the town of Onondaga Democrats, and for this November, we have candidates for town board, town justice, for the first time in recent memory, town manager. That's Khaled Bey, some of you might know. We are trying to get our candidates on a third-party independent line on the ballot too, so that independents, it's called Onondaga Forward, so independents and people who want to vote for liberal candidates but don't want to vote for either major party have someone to vote for. So I have a table back there, Onondaga Forward. If anyone here lives in the boundaries of the town of Onondaga and is registered to vote there, I'd be happy. I look forward to having your signature on the petition, which is on the table in the back. So, thank you.
Big day coming up, May 1st. Steve Simon has something to say about it.
Okay, the next national call for action is May 1st, obviously May Day. A big focus on labor. There's a Labor Federation dinner at the Hotel Syracuse in the evening. So the original plan, if you haven't heard about the change, was to meet at the Everson Courtyard. We couldn't get permission. We negotiated with the city and the Parks Department, and so we're at Clinton Square. Okay, so for anybody who hasn't registered that change, it's real important. Don't go to the Everson, go to Clinton Square at about 3:30 on May 1st. We're gonna gather, we've got 4 great speakers. I don't know who they are off the top of my head. We've got some people that'll do some music. We've got a sound system coming that hopefully will deal with that noisier environment. I was just down there this morning scoping it out, so we'll see about that. And then for those that are able, we're gonna march on the sidewalks down to the hotel and do a honk and wave in support of the folks who are coming for the labor dinner that evening. Yeah, we've had great cooperation from the city. They saw us scrambling because they couldn't understand us not getting permission at the Everson, and the people at the police department and the Parks Department and the city permitting office have been wonderful. So it's a weekday. The weather's not supposed to be good, you know. Cory Booker stood in front of the Congress for 25 hours, and there's people sitting in a jail in El Salvador. We can go to Clinton Square for a couple of hours.
Okay, in a moment, we're going to shift to hear from a couple of local candidates. Are there any other types of announcements before we do that? I'm going to introduce one candidate in just a moment. Any other local candidates that want to take 1 minute to introduce themselves?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Johnson, and we have just formulated a new party that's called the Urban Voices Party. We're going to be running for open council seat and a seat in the, I think it's the 4th ward that we're going to be running against. So we definitely need your assistance if you're looking for change in the city. We're going to be that change element for you. We're out there to fight for you. And the interesting thing is we're not running as politicians, but as servant to the people. So we're here to serve you, to be a voice for the things that you speak up and no one hears you. We're here to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
I'm Hannah Ehrenreich. I'm running for Syracuse Common Councilor at Large. The at-large positions for Syracuse Common Council represent the whole of the city. So it does not matter where you live. You can vote for me on June 24th. And what is June 24th? It is the Democratic primary. Yes, you were all correct. You can say that. It's okay. And for those of you who are not registered Democrats, the election is November 4th. We're just looking ahead. Is it 5th?
No, it's 4th.
It's 4th. Ha ha. We were all right. We can all be right about that. I am running because I'm a progressive, and I believe that we need more progressive leadership at local governance and in all places where decisions are made right now. When I lived in North Carolina, we had 1 minute. I lived in North Carolina for a brief stint. I was born and raised here. I'm a Nottingham graduate. I went to Smith College. I love this community and I believe that we have a lot to do, but I also believe that we are smart and capable and we are doing it together. And there was a little thing in North Carolina when they were taking away voting rights that we like to say, that I think that we could bring here today. It's called One Step Forward. What is it? Forward together, not one step back. That's what it was. That makes more sense, right? All right, could you guys help me out? Because clearly it's been a long week here, all right? Forward together, not one step back. Forward together, not one step back. One more time. Forward together, not one step back. Good? Okay, 24, Jamie.
Imagine for a moment that I'm not up here with a mic, I'm some guy in the back of the room just yelling, please vote for Hannah, we need progressives on the city council. Okay. One more special guest, who is a candidate for mayor. And I'm gonna say I've known Sharon Owens for years, worked with her a bit when I was on the Citizen Review Board, which was a tremendously positive experience. I learned to disagree with someone very respectfully because she was City Hall and I was somebody else. And that was okay. I have great respect for the person. Come on up, Sharon.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, you all should look at yourselves from up here. This is an amazing group. Sharon Owens, I am running for mayor. I almost said president. We'll see. But I am running for mayor of Syracuse. John, and I don't know if he left, he said something very important. The difference between being a politician and being a public servant. And so for almost 40 years of my life, I've been a public servant, not in City Hall. My first stint in City Hall was after working in not-for-profit work for about 30 years. And had the opportunity through Stephanie Minor to work as the Deputy Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development on the business side, on the housing side of things. And so I did that for about 3.5 years, and then Jesse Dowdell retired from the Southwest Community Center. And because of all my work in not-for-profit work all that time, I thought of it as going home to me. Southwest is an important amenity in our community, and it was under financial and physical and environmental distress. And so not me, but the team turned that building and that program around. And I said, if there was ever gonna be a conversation about the community, and particularly the community of color, it was gonna happen at Southwest Community Center. And that's what we did. And I was very proud of that. And when I left City Hall the first time, I ran saying I would never come back. But I ended up back. I felt that coming back to City Hall gave me a platform to really apply what I had learned in the not-for-profit world, in kitchens, in living rooms, on couches, visiting schools, working in Head Start, working at home headquarters, working for Peace Incorporated on multiple sides of town, working for Jubilee Home, where I got my toe in the water for affordable housing. And so coming back to City Hall gave me an opportunity for my voice, which is very unique in that level of government, which is Black female mom, that perspective in city government. And so I'm proud of the work I've done. I am human. We don't do everything right. I do make mistakes, but I'm the first one to say I made a mistake and I need to change direction. The point about particularly sitting across the table from people who don't necessarily agree with you or necessarily see things the way you do is I've been told my superpower, and that I'm able to, whether it was police reform, whether it was working with the folks from the CRB, the bottom line is that I believe that we all have the best interests of the city at heart. We may have different views on how to get there, but if we can't find the ground, that doesn't necessarily have to be in the middle. Maybe one time it's my 70, but other times it might be my 30. but how can we get to a resolution that helps us all? I am learning very quickly in this race that I don't know how to be a politician. I don't know politic words. I don't know politic systems, which I'm learning very quickly, are full of a bunch of bull. But I'm committed to the city. I'm committed to affordable housing in all neighborhoods. I'm committed to good cause eviction. I am committed to good cause eviction, and I'm gonna be honest with you. It was an evolution for me, but that is who I am. I have to learn, I have to understand, I have to know. But I do know that in this community, that there needs to be protections for tenants.
Absolutely. Right.
And good cause eviction, despite the nasty grams I've gotten since the paper, the article, is not anti-landlord.
No, it's.
It is pro-tenant. And so, with that, is the CRB, I'm hoping that we're able to straighten out what's going on with that right now. And the news, the announcement that was made around the environmental impact studies for Micron. I am hopeful for Micron. I am. And I am because we need industry in this community that will create jobs. Again, poverty is an economic definition. It means how much money a family, a household has. You generate increased household wealth by good jobs. By good jobs. So the mistake that we made when Chrysler shut down and GE and Miller Brewery and Carrier shut down is that we didn't have a transition plan for folks. So either they left or they had jobs that were underpaid, under their skill set. And I am engaged and proudly engaged in multiple workforce initiatives that are preparing. Micron will mean nothing if it cannot change the trajectory of the financial status of people in our community. Give me the hand wave when I'm 30 seconds out. Okay, the last thing I will say is just that news about the environmental impact study. It is no secret that we spent years, and I was unapologetically a community grid advocate. Community grid, that's what I was. The devastation of that highway and that bridge on the 15th Ward and that community, the environmental impacts, the health impacts of the people in that community, absolutely, that thing, I'm gonna be there, the first one shouting when the first plank of that highway comes down in this city. Lastly, we spent years on that environmental impact study. I can't believe I just heard we're spending 40 days, 45 days. It's an important process. So it needs a time for the voices around the impact environmentally happen. We did the right thing for 81. We spent the time needed, and we need to do that again on that issue. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Elaine Denton and I am running for county legislator. You can find out more for me at electelanedenton.com in my own role as a candidate. Thank you.
And Dustin's going to introduce this topic about the SAVE Act, which is one more MAGA Republican plot to keep people from voting. And talk about what we can do about it. We're gonna give them till, at the most, till about 10 after, so then we'll move as quickly as we can to committees, and committees can stay until 5 or a little after if they want to do that. And we'll talk, for new people, we'll talk about the choices of committees that you can go to, or you can stay in this room with new people. Okay, Dustin, you are up. Will you introduce your friends?
That's right, absolutely. Hi, I'm Dustin, and these are my friends. I'm Dustin Czarny. I'm the Democratic Elections Commissioner here in Onondaga County. When I approached CNY Solidarity about possibly talking about the SAVE Act, and they suggested a panel, I could think of 2 people that I wanted on it. And that's Christine Wood, a public citizen, and Brett Edkins of Stand Up America. That's them right there. Please give them a round. they have been tremendous leaders in this area. And we're gonna talk not just about the SAVE Act, but the president's executive order that came out against the EAC. And I say this with no exaggeration. These two things are the biggest threat to our democracy that we've seen since Jim Crow. And now where it is right now, the SAVE Act has passed the House of Representatives on a party line vote. Democrats, I think there were 4 Democrats that voted for it. But there was well over 200 that voted against it, including John Mannion, who is not just voting against it, but very vocal against it as well.
Yeah.
And it's now gone on to the Senate, where Senator Schumer has called it dead on arrival. But as we all know, this is a big push for President Trump and the Republican Party, and we'll explain why it is so dangerous and why we should not stop our activism on it. And then we'll talk about the executive order, which has been partially blocked in the federal courts just on Thursday. But I'm gonna turn it over to Christine and Brett to talk about the SAVE Act and just how dangerous this piece of legislation is.
Thanks so much, Dustin. I appreciate having the space to talk about this issue today. It's great to see a lot of friendly faces, but a lot of new faces. But as Dustin mentioned, this emergence of the SAVE Act is a grave threat to our democracy. So I want to talk a little bit about what this bill is, the history of how it came about, the intent behind it, and the impact. And I'm going to pass over to Brett, who's going to dive into how it's going to impact people across the district and across the country. So in short, what is the SAVE Act? It's a voter suppression bill that would disenfranchise millions of voters across the country.
Yep.
How it would do that is through overly restrictive documents or proof of citizenship requirements. What this bill would do in practice is make it so every time you go to either initially register to vote or update your voter registration, whether you're moving down the street or moving across the state, or whether you're just changing your political party, every time you update your voter registration, you would need to show up in person at the Board of Elections with either an original copy of your birth certificate or a passport. So everyone in this room, I can see by your faces that inherently we hear this and we know why this is a problem. Countless people across the country do not have a passport or access to the original copy of their birth certificate. In fact, over half of Americans do not have a passport. And as far as the original copy of your birth certificate, that can really be easily lost, difficult to acquire. I, for a while, have yet to, just now, I'm getting my real ID because even I didn't have an original copy of a birth certificate. I was the last child. My parents kind of dropped the ball on the document retention for me. But so I had to go through hoops to track it down, and it really took weeks and months. And I'm someone who has the time and resources to do that, but not everyone does. So that is exactly what this bill would do, is it would put up barriers to voting that would impact all of us, but would also impact a lot of very specific constituencies in different ways. So why would any member of Congress put forth this legislation? Well, it goes back pretty far, but this first emerged as a bill and a top priority for the House Republicans last summer. And what this bill was aiming to do was cast doubt on the legitimacy of US elections. It was a continuation of the big lie. Many people called it a messaging bill because they wanted to be able to spread xenophobic conspiracy theories about our election. While they're calling this, election integrity or election security, really, this is all just a scheme to make it more difficult to vote, while also pushing out a rhetoric, a xenophobic and racist rhetoric, that there is tons of non-citizens coming to this country and voting in our elections. That's what they're claiming. But we have tons of amazing organizations that do work on this, as well as folks like Dustin, election officials, who track this sort of thing, and there's no widespread evidence of voter fraud in this country. So at its face, this is a false argument and a false narrative. The intent behind this legislation is to cast this misinformation around our election, so that just like in 2020 with the big lie, they could tee up the environment to reject election results they don't like, and then, bonus, they get to push an agenda that would disenfranchise millions of eligible voters across the country. So at its face, that's what this legislation aims to do. So Dustin mentioned kind of where it stands right now. It is a top priority for the Republican Party, but because of the activism we saw across the country, we were able to flip to House Democrats that voted previously for this legislation that this time voted no. I would say I think we're winning the messaging war on this, which was an uphill battle. But because of all of the advocacy that we're seeing across the country, the viral social media, the LTs and op-eds that I've been seeing, and even from some of the folks in this room, the social media posts that I'm seeing, raising the awareness of this legislation, we're really seeing, we're really able to move folks on this, but we have to keep our foot on the gas. As Dustin mentioned, now it's gonna go into the Senate at some point. We may see some movement on it. To be clear, you know, it is an uphill battle in the Senate, but we can't take that for granted. Because right now, it would need 60 votes to pass the Senate. Meaning we would need 7 Democrats or a couple independents to vote for this. And we're getting really strong indication that Senate Democrats are gonna be good on this, including our senators. Senator Schumer put out a couple statements on the SAVE Act saying that his caucus will vote against it. But we have to also remember this isn't a normal Congress. You know, in some of the conversations that we're a part of, we're preparing for worst case scenario, which could be, you know, could they find a way to get this into a reconciliation package so that they could lower the threshold to 50? In a normal world, that wouldn't be possible, but what about in the one we're in now? Could they fire the parliamentarian if they got, if they didn't like the ruling on whether or not they could pass this through a simple majority? So that's why we need to be really vigilant on this and continue holding folks' feet to the fire. And then, as Dustin mentioned, not only is this a congressional fight, but now it's also a fight within the administration. Dustin will talk more later about Trump's executive order that, you know, is illegal and unconstitutional, but so is most of what he does, where he tried to advance key pieces of this legislation. And now we're seeing lots of state legislatures across the country inspired by Congress, by the House Republicans and by the president that are pushing state versions of the SAVE Act in states across the country. And while that might not impact you all here when you're registering to vote, we all know that it will impact future elections if we have huge swaths of the country who have these barriers to voting. So it's really important that we keep folks' feet to the fire on this, and we are going to share some calls to action. So before I pass it over to Brett, who's going to dive into how this will impact certain people, I just want to touch on a few key points that I like to highlight when I'm talking about this bill. When I dive into why this is a problem, I really like to emphasize what this would mean for someone who had to go through this process of getting these documents who did not have them. Many folks in my space are calling it a poll tax because either you can get a passport for $160, which is a pretty steep penalty, or even if you do need to acquire an original copy of your birth certificate, or if you're one of the millions of married women who your birth certificate doesn't match your current legal name, you have to track down your marriage license, and if you lost that, you're gonna need to pay for that as well. So not only is there tons of logistical hurdles that are going to be put up for voters, but also it's gonna cost money. And we have seen in places that already implemented similar legislation, how this can disenfranchise people. In Kansas, which implemented a similar bill about over a decade ago, there was 30,000 eligible voters that were blocked from registering to vote. So that is the potential impact that we're talking about here. We're talking about, you know, millions of voters potentially disenfranchised.
Thanks. I can add a couple of things, not too much. Christine, you covered most of it. So the bill would amend the National Voter Registration Act to prohibit states from registering anybody who doesn't provide documentary proof of citizenship. That means passport or birth certificate. If you are one of the 69 million American women who changed their name when they got married, you don't have a birth certificate, most likely, that matches your current legal name, so it would not work. If you are one of the half of Americans who don't have a passport, you need to get one in order to register to vote under this. Because the bill also requires you to provide this documentary proof in person, if any of you voted or registered to vote by mail or online, you wouldn't be able to do that anymore. You gotta go to DMV, you gotta go to the board in person. So maybe that's fine for you, but if you're a rural voter and you don't live close to the DMV or the board office, this is tough. This is miles. If you're a military voter, overseas American, what are you supposed to do here? Your military ID is not documentary proof of citizenship. They do not often have your place of birth, or if you were born abroad by military parents who were serving abroad, you were not born in the United States. So your military ID, which might say you were born in Germany, doesn't prove your citizenship, so you wouldn't be able to use it. If you have a tribal ID, you wouldn't be able to use that as documentary proof of citizenship because they don't have the place of your birth. In New York, we're the 4th highest state with passports. 71% of New Yorkers have a passport. We're very well traveled. But we also still have, because we're a big state, 5 million people who don't have passports. We still have 3.8 million female citizens who don't have a birth certificate that matches their current legal name. And that's not to mention any trans Americans who have changed their names. And that birth certificate will not work for them. So this is the kind of impact we're talking about. I wanted to talk a little bit about how you should talk about this bill. By the way that we're talking about it, you would think this is a non-starter in Congress. Who the heck would vote for this thing? The Republicans packaged this and sold it publicly as a way to stop non-citizens from voting. Everyone hates that idea. You know, Americans writ large are like, oh, non-citizens should not be voting. And that's how they won the messaging battle. It's how they got a few Democrats to cross the aisle and vote for it. And coming after Trump's election, which was a very anti-immigrant election, in January, most of us thought we were in an uphill battle. This was going to be tough. The Republicans were going to paint this as a vote to stop non-immigrant, non-citizens from voting, and it would be tough for Democrats to vote against it. We're winning the messaging battle because we're not accepting their frame. This is not a bill about non-citizen voting. This is a bill about stopping women and rural voters and ordinary American citizens from voting. Don't even say the word non-citizen if you're talking about this publicly. Don't. That's accepting their frame of what the bill is. It's not really what it does. It's only putting restrictions on Americans trying to exercise their constitutional right to vote. So, one thing that we did at Stand Up America, because all of us there, all of us, all of you, we're all political nerds, and maybe the way that we talk about this bill isn't persuasive to people who aren't as in tune as us. So we tested a bunch of messages to see how to persuade people against the SAVE Act. What we found originally is a low baseline of opposition to this bill, which is disappointing. People hear about the bill, they think, yeah, we should stop non-citizens from voting. Then you test the messaging. And every message we tested moved double digits people opposing the bill. The top message was, I'm just going to read it to you. The SAVE Act is an attempt to trick us into making it harder for millions of eligible Americans to cast their votes. Politicians in DC say it would prevent non-citizens from voting, but that's already illegal. The bill would actually prevent millions of eligible American citizens from registering by requiring everyone to show up in person with a passport or birth certificate. 21 million Americans don't have those documents readily available. When Kansas enacted a similar law, 31,000 eligible American citizens were blocked from registering to vote. This moved opposition to the bill by 16 points among all registered voters. The best message we had. One, it plays into everyone's doubts about DC politicians. They're always trying to trick us and they're lying to us. And people immediately gravitate to that. They say it's about this, but it's actually about citizens. And then you talk about it. The second best message was talking about how it hurts rural voters specifically, because people have to show up in person and travel far for that. In states like West Virginia, Mississippi, Alabama, over 70% of the citizens don't have passports. And this was also the message most likely to mobilize people. So if you're trying to get people to take action on this, make a call, go to meetings, go to a town hall to bug their congressman, use this one. Third best message, still move people by 13 points against the bill, hurts married women. Hurts married women. So you focus on the harm that it does to women who have changed their names because they got married. 69 million American women changed their names when they got married. And they do not most likely have a birth certificate that matches their current legal name. This was also the most effective message among Republicans. They like marriage. That's probably what it was.
They get married a lot.
They get married a lot. The only last thing that we didn't talk about was the burden that this bill would place on election workers, and Dustin, you probably have a perspective on this. That the bill imposes fines and up to 5 years in prison for election officials who purposefully or accidentally register someone to vote without getting the necessary documentary proof of citizenship. So, threatening election workers who are already working under a president who constantly threatens them with jail time. So say you're an election worker, you get an application to register to vote from an overseas military service member. They say they're a New Yorker, they're from Syracuse, they're serving in Germany, they say they're a citizen, they append, a copy of a passport, but they didn't show up in person as the bill requires. You as an election worker want to register this person to vote? Are you gonna risk 5 years in prison to do it? Probably not. The Republicans are trying to intimidate election officials across the country to stop people from registering to vote. That's what this bill is really about. Now, we're gonna talk about the EO. Okay.
I'm gonna get into the EO in a second. There's one thing that I want to mention about the SAVE Act, and it kind of goes to the EO as well, is the frequency that you have to provide this proof is indicative of that this is a trick, because citizenship cannot be revoked, or it can, but it's very, very rare, like incredibly rare. Not only do you have to provide proof of citizenship in the SAVE Act, you have to do it at every registration event. You change your address, you gotta provide proof, even if you provided it before. You want a mail ballot, you have to provide proof of citizenship with that, in person. The reason you need a mail ballot is because you can't come down in person most of the time, but you gotta do it in person. And I have 320,000 registered voters in Onondaga County. I'm gonna need a bigger parking lot if everybody's gonna have to come in person. We have 100,000 transactions a year at the Onondaga County Board of Elections from people moving, from people changing their party, from people requesting absentee ballots. Every one of them would have to show up in person. I did the math the other day. That would mean 400 people a day at my office. Can you imagine how many staffers I have to have at the front counter, do 400 people a day, showing up in person to provide their proof of citizenship, so their latest transaction would be valid. That is what the SAVE Act does. Now, the EO, that the executive order that President Trump put in, is directed at the EAC. But many of the provisions of the SAVE Act are in the EO. And the EAC is the Election Assistance Commission. By the way, I'm on the local leadership council on that. I was just down there in North Carolina. We had an annual meeting, and a lot of the discussion was about this. And I got some good news on that because it has been blocked by the federal court for now. We'll see what happens when it gets to the Supreme Court, and that's where this is going to go. But one of the reasons why I'm a little hopeful that even this Supreme Court should block this EO is because of Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution says, this is the election clause, Clause 1. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators. Now, notice what's missing in there. The president. That's right. Professor Keck, did I get that right? All right. So the president is missing in there. The president has no authority to direct executive orders to any branch when it comes to voting, but especially the Election Assistance Commission, which is a separate independent body that was created with the Help America Vote Act. But what the executive order does is 4 things. It directs the EAC to change their national voter registration form to require proof of citizenship. So now it's only at the EAC, it's only the national form. So the state forms would not be changed by this order, but a lot of us use those national forms, and a lot of citizens use those national forms, especially when they're moving in and out of states. We have a very mobile society. It also changes the voluntary voting systems guidelines, which is called VVSG. Now, actually, this change that he's suggesting is not the worst change in the world. It's saying that the voting systems cannot use a QR code to determine the vote. You have to actually read the full face of the ballot. That's what we have here in Onondaga County, by the way. It's something that I think is good in generally, but what it doesn't do is provide any funding to states that already use that. And also VVSG 2.0 that just came out a couple of months ago. There is not one voting system in the country that complies with that because it's so new. And usually it takes a year or two before systems can comply with these things. The EO wants to get it done within 180 days. And so if the EO was actually enacted in the timeline that President Trump wanted, then we would have no voting systems that are in compliance with this voluntary voting system guide. Now, what he's trying to do is use this EO to restrict funds from the states that don't comply with the guidance. By the way, you don't get any funds now anyway, so that here's your $5 back, President Trump. But you know, it's I think the latest had $15 million of security funds in the latest appropriations for the entire country. So we're not getting a lot of that. That's not going to be a big stick. But there's other reasons for why he's doing this. He's doing this to create doubt in the election and try to compel states, state legislatures, especially in swing states, to enact some of this stuff on their own. The last part of the EO is that he's directing the DOJ to go after states that receive ballots after election day. By the way, New York is one of those, right? We have vote by mail ballots. They have to be postmarked on election day and received within 7 days of election day. So he's targeting these mail ballots that come in after election day. And he wants the DOJ to, and I assume will end up having a lawsuit that goes up to the Supreme Court over the meaning of election day and whether a postmark is good enough or not. So the judge blocked the first two things, the altering of the registration form and the mail ballot forms, of course, he wants that as well. And also the VVSG guidelines. The judges blocked that. And he did not block the restriction of funds from states because the states will sue on their own on that if that ever comes about. So he says that will be covered. The lawsuit that was ruled on didn't have standing on that. They weren't the states, although 19 attorney generals across the country have also separately sued on this. So that will be coming. But he did not block the DOJ from going after the states that receive ballots after election day and count them, even though they're postmarked on election day. And I expect the DOJ to continue working on that, and probably we'll see some legal action on that later this year. So now the good news with the EAC is when I was down there this last week, the commissioners, 2 appointed by Donald Trump, 2 Democrats that were appointed by Obama or before, they're all fine people. They really believe in making elections work on both sides of the aisle, and they've been very clear that they're going to follow their guidelines. So the 180-day timeline is not going to work. They believe that the 180 days is to start their review process, which will mean that there will be opportunities for public comment by, I hope, everyone in this room and about how dangerous this would be. So if they go forward with this, which will be after the injunction, after the Supreme Court rules, if the Supreme Court rules in President Trump's favor on the EO, we will have an opportunity to have our voices heard on that. And I will be very quick to share with your membership here, and so that you can share it out and know when those public comment periods are. So we will have an opportunity to have our voice heard as as citizens, no matter where. This is directed at, that's not me, right? Okay. So we will have an opportunity to have our voices heard on this with the EAC, and that was welcome news to me. And this came before we knew about the injunction that was put on Thursday. So, but be clear, The EO is about making the SAVE Act happen if the SAVE Act can't pass the Senate. And we should not rest our laurels that the Senate is going to do the right thing. They may try to get in reconciliation. They may try to change the filibuster to exempt voting procedures from the filibuster. By the way, we tried to do that too with the For the People Act. We talked about that, right? I know, smarter people than me know about that. But we did, but we were trying to expand rights. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. So we need to talk to our senators. We need to talk to our friends in other states that are in red states to tell them to talk to their senators. Because that is the way that this gets stopped, is to make it so unpopular. And that it is so much of that there will be such a backlash at the next midterm that if they try to pass this, that no matter what barriers they put up, the people are gonna vote them out. And that is, so we cannot rest on our laurels on this, because the Senate, there are ways for them to get around it. And I've heard Mitch McConnell say that he's not for altering the filibuster. It goes through his committee. And he's not for the People Act. There may be a few Republicans in the Senate that are on the fence. We gotta make sure they get off the fence and are against it. So we have a clear majority against this bill. We need 4 senators to be against this bill. So I think, are we gonna turn it over to questions now? I think. Oh, what's that? Oh, you want me to? 1 minute for call to action. Okay, all right. So we're the call to action is call your senators. There's a call in line 833-346-1779.
It'll be in the newsletter.
Sure. Folks want to write it down again. It's 833-346-1779. That's a national call line that Brett set up for us. So use it yourself, but also, as Dustin said, send it to your friends. Send that along to your friends in New York State and outside of New York State. We just heard recently that even Senator Murkowski is leaning against this bill. So we can push Democrats and Republicans alike on this issue. And aside from make that call, recruit your friends, you can also spread the word online, through letters to the editor, through social media, etc. We've been seeing just a huge groundswell of support. So let's keep that going. And happy to answer any questions folks have.
And we'll put those numbers in the newsletter, as well as Schumer and Gillibrand's, and there's 200 people in this room. If they get 200 calls, they have to pay attention. We're hoping they will. Questions? John?
How can we make sure that this does not go to reconciliation? So how can we do that?
Yeah.
Because it seems like it would die at filibuster, but if it goes to reconciliation, it'd be a big problem.
Right. Normally, a bill in the Senate has to be budget related or financial related to get through the reconciliation process. So most likely, if the Republicans tried this, the parliamentarian would rule it out of order and wouldn't get jammed through. Of course, for those of us old enough to remember, the Republicans have fired the parliamentarian before when they didn't like the ruling that did it to get the Bush tax cuts through, I think. So there's precedent there. I think the real danger here isn't so much the SAVE Act, because we're kind of beating it back very effectively. What the risk here is that we win the battle on the SAVE Act, but we lose the war. That the SAVE Act passes in various states across the country. Texas is voting in committee tomorrow on a bill. That's the second largest state in the country, so they might have this requirement added there. And it's in dozens of other states where Republicans are trying to pass it. In the Senate, the risk is that you don't get the SAVE Act, but you get what they're going to say is a compromise, which isn't. Katie Britt, senator from Alabama, has a bill that would impose documentary proof of citizenship requirements on states voluntarily. If states want to change the law to require proof of citizenship, they would now be able to. Right now they can't under the National Voter Registration Act. Her bill would allow states to do so. So you would have 2 standards across the country, some states that have this passport birth certificate requirement, some that don't. And they will try to paint it publicly as a compromise bill, and that's the risk. There are Democrats in the Senate who love the word compromise, they love the word bipartisanship, and they ignore the substance of the bill. That this is still the SAVE Act, it's still voter suppression, and even if it's not happening in your state, you're disenfranchising women, trans Americans, rural Americans, anyone without a passport. So that's a real risk in the Senate, that they'll try to compromise, water it down, and sell it to you as a bipartisan compromise when it is in fact just another version of the SAVE Act. And there's the risk that.
5 minutes, we're gonna take
Sorry.
a couple more
All right,
questions.
then the last risk is that the EO intimidates some states to do the EO in those states, but even if it's blocked federally. Sorry.
I'm wondering why it's important for us to contact New York senators. It seems that they would oppose this without our pushing on.
I would never, I think, you know, there's always political capital up on the Hill, right? And they're opposing a lot of things. They're opposing a lot of legislation, they're opposing a lot of executive orders from the president. People need to know that voting matters to them, and that voting is important for them to stand up for us, and not just oppose it, but to be vocal opponents of it, and to message against it, so we don't lose that message war. Let's face it, the senators have bigger voices than us. They've been good, they can be better, everybody can be better. And I think letting them know just how much we are afraid that this is going to happen will get them to spend that political capital to oppose it and to make sure, look, Senator Schumer is our leader in the Senate. He can wrangle this caucus.
And if you have a personal story, that also is so powerful to let your senators know so they can recite it. You know, there was one that I heard recently about a voter in Wisconsin who had a fire plague their home and lost literally all of their possessions, including their documentary proof of citizenship. Those stories can then, if you have one and relay it, whether it's to the senators directly or through other means, are really powerful and help show win hearts and minds, and then also give those powerful stories to senators who are debating this or speaking publicly about this legislation.
Thank you. Question here?
This is on.
It'll be close to a minute.
Okay, sorry. If you were to choose for.
Hello.
Okay, if you were to choose for federal senators to lobby to try and, you know, push them towards sanity. You know, there's Collins, Murkowski, anyone else?
Surprisingly, Micron on this. I think he's actually I know, it's strange meta titles, but McConnell's has been vocally hesitant on this. And also I would say Thune, he's the new Thune, the new majority leader of the Senate. He's going to be able to decide whether and if this comes to the floor or not. So those are who I would choose.
Murkowski, Collins, Tillis in North Carolina will not probably vote the right way, but he needs to be under pressure on this. He's vulnerable because he's up next year. And on the Democratic side, Fetterman just constantly makes me nervous.
Hi.
Batteries.
I'll shout. So I have two questions. What does this mean for the current New York State DMV process that a lot of people are used to? And then my second question is, we are lobbying Schumer right now to do a filibuster on this. And I would really like to get some talking points and specifics that we can continue to use in our arguments with them.
So for the New York State DMV process, how that would alter the New York State DMV process, the in-person component is what would alter it the most. And the frequency of having to provide this proof. Now, this would be for federal elections. Local elections, New York may not change their law on that. And so then we would have a bifurcated registration system like we see in Arizona, in the opposite right now. Arizona passed a non-citizens or a proof of citizenship, but it can't enforce it for the federal election. So they actually have two different registration lists. One for people that can vote in federal elections only, and one for people who can vote in local and federal elections because they provided their proof. I can tell you that's a nightmare, and that is one of the reasons why Arizona takes so long to count their votes, is that we would have that in New York in the opposite. So it would totally hamper online voter registration and the DMV online voter registration and AVR that is coming sometime next year. It would decimate that, because you'd have to show up in proof with the citizenship paperwork.
Thank you. Malcolm, can you shout your question? Last one.
Yeah.
Sorry, we gotta cut it off.
I came across the acronym that I think is worth using for SAVE, Stop Americans Voting Everywhere.
I love it. That's a great
That's a good
one.
one.
Stop Americans voting everywhere, in case anyone missed that.
Thank you so much. We will put stuff in the newsletter. Remember, when you call Schumer or McConnell or any of those people, they count those calls. They know exactly how many calls come in about any given issue. So they do count the calls. They count the ones from their constituents first, but they do pay attention to what comes in. I'm gonna turn this over to Elaine, and we're going to get ready to close this up and move to committees. Thank you so much.
So, we're gonna break out into committees. Committees is where we do a lot of work. We plan protests, we work on actions like these calls. I'm gonna break down kind of like really briefly what they're doing, so you can kind of pick and choose what committee you would like to attend to today. You can pick whichever one you want. So I'm just gonna let you know where they are. So if you wanna plan protest, they're gonna be working on any kind of last minute details on May 1st. And then also look to planning next actions. So if you're interested in planning protests, join them. Outreach, they are going to be defining roles, looking to define their goals and review projects to reach out into the community. The legislative team is gonna, and they are, you'll hear updates from Schumer, Gillibrand, and Mannion, our engagement team. So they're always calling and setting up meetings with them. You'll get updates from those teams. They're building relationships with our representatives and pushing them to hold town halls and do more to protect our democracy. So again, they'll be over there. The electoral committee will be upstairs, and they identify, share, and support opportunities for our members to help candidates locally and nationally who will resist the Trump agenda. Climate justice will meet right here in the Oscar room, and they are working on update on the Micron DEIS. They're working on that petition to extend the comment period. They also have a petition for good jobs, the Good Job platform, and they also get very involved with the New York Heat Act and the New York State legislation. And then state and local action will be upstairs, and we will be discussing Onondaga County loaning $27 million of taxpayer money to buy more land for private companies. We'll be talking about transparency in government, New York State budget, and the city of Syracuse budget. So we'll be upstairs. So if you don't have a committee that you are not ready to join yet, you're welcome to stay right here. And you can for an open discussion. So again, thank you so much for coming. Make sure you sign in and you're receiving our emails, and we will see you next month. Thank you. Thank you so much.